So one thing I wanted to do, button up. Let's be proper. One thing I wanted to do in this video is I wanted to show you the anatomy of a for loop again, kind of like what we did here, but in code, and also show you the debugger, because both things are kind of useful. I'm not going to do void and setup. You can actually like kind of, we'll do this at one point, just kind of make a thing here. And so let's say someone, you can write code here and it will work unless you have setup and draw, and then it gets weird. So let's say I have, I want to print out 20 lines, the numbers 1 through 20 or something like that. And I'm going to, so if I want to print out the numbers 1 through 20, well, the first question is, where do I start? Where does the control variable start? So one thing you can ask if you're having trouble setting up your for loop is you could be like, well, where should I start? Okay. If I want to print out the numbers 1 through 20, it might make sense to start at the number 1, right? And so that's where I should start. And then the next thing is, where should I end? Right? So when should this thing kick out of the loop? Well, when it gets to 21, it should kick out of the loop, right? But not before. So we could do something like that, right? Or you could think of it another way, and you could say, well, the last thing I want to print out when it is 20, and then after 20, I want it to kick. The last thing I want to print out is 20, and then after 20, I want it to kick out of the loop, right? So less than or equal to 20. Sorry, 20 would work too. Okay, so I less than. I wonder if I can put a comment. Well, we'll just do this for now. And then I equals I plus 1, right? If you see I plus plus, that's the same thing. We're just, I'm just so sick of plus plus that we're doing this. You could also here say I is less than 21, right? That's yeah. Convince yourself that that's functionally equivalent. Okay. So now we want to print out these numbers, and we go system.out.println. And one thing we often do is we use the control variable inside the loop, all right? In fact, the only thing that's changing from loop to loop is the control variable. So if we don't want to run the same exact code each time through the loop, right? We want something to vary in the loop. We have to somehow attach that variance to the control variable. What do I mean by that? Well, each time through the loop, we're printing something out. So the loop's kind of doing the same thing, but we should be printing out a different number, okay? The only thing that's changing is I, right? And so we need to be printing out I, okay? Whatever we're printing out, if we want it to change, we need to attach it to I somehow, okay? That also relates to how we update I, and we'll talk about that in a second. All right, so I am going to print out, and I'm going to do the same thing I was doing in the, you might see it in the console down there. I'm going to say on iteration, so I'm going to do a string and use the plus to concatenate, and I'm going to say I there, okay? So say on iteration, whatever. And it should work, and this isn't, let me stop this. This isn't too crazy. And I'm in debug mode for a reason. I'm going to disable debugger. Hopefully you saw, well, we'll go over it in a second. So I'll hit run. I just want to see, I want you to see this program run. And it will actually open a tiny little baby processing window, 100 by 100. And it does what we think it does, right? It prints out 1 through 20. And that's pretty cool, okay? Now, if we want to... there we go. Now, if we want to set the... if we want to see how this actually processes it or how it's actually working, one thing we can start getting into is the debugger. And it's really simple. So if debugger sounds like something that's going to make your life more complicated, it's not. It's going to make your life 100 times easier, okay? And why is it going to make your life 100 times easier? Because anytime you have a problem, just set a breakpoint and start going through it, and you can see how the variables are changing over time, okay? So it's really a easy way to debug your program. It tells you what the computer's thinking. And we could talk about the theory behind that too at some point. But really, every logic problem you have is because you're misinterpreting what the computer is actually doing with your code. Okay, so you think you're doing one thing, the computer's actually doing the other thing, and you're exasperated like, but I did this, why isn't it working? And if that seems familiar, it's familiar to a lot of programmers all the time. Right this second, across the world, there's millions of programmers saying that. But I already did this, why is it so? Okay, whatever. So I'm gonna enable the debugger. I went up to the debug window up here to enable the debugger. There's some interesting things actually in the debugger. So what you're gonna see here, I can't, is that you shouldn't have I there. I ran the debugger already, so you wouldn't have I there at the beginning, but you will have this processing one. And if I set a breakpoint here, so did you see how I set that breakpoint? I went up to the line number, I know they're tiny, and I clicked on it, and it made a little diamond out of the line number, okay? So now that breakpoint is set, okay? And notice when I enable the debugger, I can run debug, I can do something called step, I can continue, and I can stop, okay? Only 4 things. So stop stops the program, debug runs the program, but it runs the program and it stops, it halts the program at the breakpoint, okay? So that's almost like you can stop the program in the middle, open it up, and see what all the variable values are. Very useful, okay? Let's do that real quickly. I'm gonna hit play on the debugger, and it played. It didn't print anything out down here, but the reason it didn't print anything out is because it stopped at this breakpoint. And you can tell it stopped at this breakpoint because that little diamond, and I know it's tiny, but so do it on your own at home too, so you can understand what it's doing. It's turned into a little tiny arrow. There's gotta be a way to make these bigger. I should do that. I should look at that. But for right now, it's definitely stopped here, and it highlighted it. That's maybe the better reason or thing to think about. All right, so what are my variables right now? These are my variables. So this variable window will pop up when you debug. And what are my variables? Well, processing has a bunch of variables. And we've talked about a lot of these variables, right? Well, they're actually in the program. So processing has a width and height. That defines our screen size, right? A mouse X and mouse Y, always keeping track of where our mouse is. I have no idea where P mouse X and what P mouse X and P mouse Y is. Key, I believe, is if you press a key, we'll do a key thing. But like, I wanna have this character move with the arrow key. So I press the up key. The last key pressed will come in here. Oh, maybe I could do that because it's running right now. I wonder if I could, if I hit the key press. Oh no, I have to do it over the actual program. Okay, wait, hold on. And maybe when I hit step over, it'll change. Maybe not though. I don't know. Key code's probably just the ASCII code of that key that was just hit. I don't know what focused is. Frame rate, right? We know what frame rate is. It's running at 60 frames a second, and frame count 0 so far. We don't have draw going, so there's not going to be any frame counts, I don't think. If we had a draw loop, we could see which time through the draw loop, a void draw function, which is called 60 times a second. We could see which time through the draw function we were, and we could do that a little later. Step is kind of the most important thing. It takes one step forward in your program. So we're going to take one step forward in this program. We're here, so we're before this line gets executed. We take one step, we'll be after this line gets executed. Okay, let's do that real quickly. I take one step, and what happened? Well, we got a new variable. I know you can't see that, but, well, maybe I can't see that. Maybe I shouldn't speak for you. Maybe it's just my old eyes can't see that. But I believe that says I. And it's set to 1. Hey, so every time we have a variable, it shows up here, a local in scope variable, I should say. It shows up here, and right now I is in scope because we are in the for loop, right? We've created I equal to 1, and so that actually makes a lot of sense. Okay, and then we can step over again, and what we did was we jumped back here because it came down here, and it looped back up because that's the for loop, right? And it, in the meantime, printed out on iteration 1. All right, so we've done the first time through the loop, okay? And we could go and we can do the second time through the loop, right? And I equals 2, and the third time, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, and notice they're all printing down there. And if you want to just, if you're want to like continue on, you can just hit continue, okay? So one thing you can do is you can like run through your whole program this way and keep on setting breakpoints. Be like, well, okay, I've done this. This looks like it's working. Oh, there's another for loop down here. What I'll do is I'll put a breakpoint here, a breakpoint here, and a breakpoint here. I'll make sure this works, and then if that works, I'll hit continue, and it'll jump down here and hit this breakpoint, and then I'll step through it for a little bit. And then if that seems to work, I'll hit continue one more time and hit another breakpoint. Or if I just want to end, continue through the program, I'm like, okay, this is working fine. I'm just going to continue. I hit continue, and it just runs the rest of the program without hitting the breakpoint again. Okay, so it's just continue means finish the program up. So maybe I'm wrong. Maybe you can't set a breakpoint down here and have it hit. Or if the breakpoint's already been hit, we have to try it out. I don't know how this particular debugger executes that. So cool. So we were able to do a breakpoint. We were able to step through this thing. We continued, and it got us to iteration 20. And now we're down here, and it looks like we're basically done with the program, right? And so I'm going to hit. Nope, there's no more stepping. Okay, I'm gonna hit stop. The big things here is, why did this only stop at 13? What happened? Let's throw, hold the phones. Was there another break? Oh, I set another breakpoint during execution. Okay, this is good. This is exactly how I thought it would work, but then I got confused. Okay, let's do this again. All right, I can keep on going through this, right? I can step through this a bunch of times, blah, 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 right? And then I could actually set another breakpoint and hit continue, and it'll hit that breakpoint, right? I is 12. And so you can do that. You can set other breakpoints and hit continue. It'll jump over and hit this next breakpoint. It'll like jump to the next breakpoint if you don't want to just step forward. Can I undo this breakpoint? I guess I can't undo the breakpoint while I'm in it. So now I can't step. But then it went through the whole iterations. Okay, I guess the lesson here is don't use continue, because this doesn't make sense to me. All right, so we're just gonna use step. It's fine. It's still super useful. Okay, I'm gonna hit debug again. We hit the breakpoint, and I can look this up later and figure out why it's wrong. So we're stepping, we're stepping, we're stepping, we're stepping. 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, and then we jump out of it, right? 21 kicks us out, and our program is finished, stopped. So notice I has dropped out of scope at this point, and we're done, okay? Notice that also, since I has dropped out of scope, if I come down here and I say for int I equals 0, I is less than 20, I plus plus, right? It's totally nice and legal. It's not a variable redefinition, because this I box just got eliminated right here from memory, and so now we can create a new variable named I, and there's no issues. All right, hopefully that makes a lot of sense, or more sense. I know there's a little snafu with the continue stuff, but I'll look that up later. In the meantime, you should think about not just the anatomy of a for loop, which you probably know and have it pretty much in your head already, but how to use the debugger and how you might use the debugger in certain situations to make sure something's doing what you think it's doing, okay? You can even set a debugger in functions. You can set them in methods and classes. You can set them anywhere, breakpoint, I mean. And when you run the debugger, it will go there and stop. All right, when you're finished with the debugger and you want to go back to normal programming, regular programming, you can, so if I hit stop here and I go to debug, you can disable the debugger. Make sure, so you have to hit stop. And you disable the debugger, and the debugger gets disabled, and our window goes away. There's some other stuff, step into and step out, that step into instead of steps into a function, right? And step out steps out of a function. So if you were like going down here and there's a function call, you can step into that function. We'll do an example later. All right, see you next video. If I could hit stop on this, I can see you next.